I'm sure everybody's got a ton of questions, so I'll keep it brief. Again, after watching the film, just really excited at the direction that we're headed. To play a team of that caliber, they were ranked in the top 25 preseason for a reason, and that's a really good football team, really physical football team that we found a way to win, and just the sense on the sideline and just our demeanor and our attitude is headed in the right direction. We're not a finished product yet. Don't know that we ever will be this year, but we are headed in the right direction. Excited to play in this rivalry. It's one that I have been a part of, 2 of them in '99 and 2000. One very fond memory, one very not so fond memory. 63-14. I still remember that score. It's been embedded into my brain. But I think, this is when you go into one of the most storied rivalries in college football history, if not the most. I think it is important that you recognize that this is a big game for a lot of people in both states. It's a big game because it's a conference game. It's a big game because of the uniqueness of the Texas State Fair and it being on a neutral site every year, and half the stadium is burnt orange and half the stadium is crimson, and we do recognize that. However, I think it's also important to make sure that your team knows that the formula for success is not going to change, and it's not going to change depending on the opponent. It's not going to change depending on the location. It's not going to change depending on what state your opponent hails from. The recipe for success is what it's been the last couple weeks, is prepare really, really hard, and then all the way up until kickoff, and then when the ball is kicked off, cut it loose and trust your preparation and trust the preparation of the guy next to you and his motivation for your happiness and your success, and good things usually happen when you do that. So we won't change any of that way of thinking because it is our rival, but we do recognize its place in college football lore, if you will. Questions?
Tom, is Sam the guy now? Is he the leader at quarterback after that performance?
Funny, I knew I was going to get asked that question. I don't think we're ready to make that decision until we see how healthy Shane is. He was better yesterday, but still a little bit gimpy. And so I think if Shane is not 100%, I think that statement is accurate. I think if Shane shows up to practice tomorrow and is running around and throwing balls and is balanced and on point, then we'll evaluate it from at that point. But and again, it doesn't do me any good to tell you even if I did know, because I kind of like having the defense have to prepare for 2, and so I doubt if you're going to hear anything from me throughout the course of the week, but you guys can keep asking.
Coach, the offense, like on paper, it wasn't supposed to do what it did against Kansas State, yet it did. Who gets the most credit? Was it Sam? Was it the O-line stepping up? And then with that said, how important is some offensive confidence heading in?
Huge. This was a fragile bunch that needed some confidence against, like you said. I mean, this is the #1 defense in our conference, one of the top 20 defenses in the country, and so we did need that. And I think you've got some offensive players not puffing their chest out, but a little extra pep in their step now because they know what they're capable of doing when they play well. Who gets the credit? I mean, everywhere. I think, Tim Beck called a great game. We did a lot of look back to the sideline and have him get us into some good plays. We still got to run the ball better when we hand it to our tailbacks. Obviously, that defense is pretty set on stopping that. But we got to do a better job up front with that. I think there was some O-line improvement, which was good to see. Still got a lot of work to do with 2 freshman tackles and, Terrell Cooney at center. So, that group has to continue to improve, but it was good to see. I think the one that stood out, the group that I challenged the most heading into the week was the wide receiver group. They're the group that, on paper, is by far the most talented and the deepest on offense. And, we challenged them, and they had 5 different guys grade out at championship level. So that was encouraging to see. You'd like to not have to challenge them every week, and we've addressed that as well. But that's a group that should be able to help carry us a little bit, as we break in, or whoever we're playing at quarterback, and break in some inexperienced offensive linemen.
Coach, in 4 of the 5 games this year, y'all have gone a full half without an offensive touchdown. Is there something you can pinpoint as to, what happens, throughout a half that happens, or is that just a statistic that doesn't really even matter much at all?
Yeah, I didn't realize. What was it? The second half, I guess, in this game. The first half ones, I think, are a bit of good defensive game planning. One, maybe a little bit late to adjust / recognize some differences than what we saw in film. I am proud that of those 4 games, 3 of the 4 halves you're talking about, I think, were in the first half. So we were able to make adjustments as a staff and as players at halftime and come out. But you saying that hasn't that's the first time I even thought about it, so I don't think it's an issue.
Brian? Tom, after watching the game Saturday and then watching the film on Sunday, you still don't feel comfortable standing here saying that Sam is your starter?
No.
I mean, what does he need to do more? Is there something he didn't do?
I mean, Sam had made a lot of mistakes. There's no doubt he also played really well and tough and physical, but I don't know what good it does me to tell Mike Stoops and Lincoln Riley what I feel about my quarterback situation.
Fair enough. Let me ask this different question about the running backs. I guess I don't understand the rotation and what you guys are trying to accomplish. Help me understand that. Like Tennille Carter would have a good run and then come off the field, and then Kyle would maybe 1 or 2 and then come off. Well, what are y'all trying to accomplish by rotating on each possession like y'all are?
One, nobody has separated themselves, so the only way to find out is to let the guys play. I think there are some things, there are certain runs that some running backs do better than others, so I think that plays a big part in it. And but the biggest thing is that nobody's just taken it and ran with it, no pun intended. And so you're going to continue to see that. I mean, if it's until somebody, grabs a hold of it and goes.
Given Oklahoma's struggles in their secondary and what you've just said about your receivers, is that one of the most favorable matchups you may like in this game?
I like our matchup with our receivers on a lot of people. I mean, I do think, and maybe I'm putting a lot of pressure on them. Maybe that's probably a good thing. I think those guys they can play with. I mean, they showed against USC. I mean, we can play on the perimeter with anybody in the country. So, is this week any different than others? Not really.
Coach, looking back at Saturday when you didn't take that chip shot field goal, are you going to keep the binder? Or are you going to reevaluate? Or was that a binder decision, or was that your gut decision to not to kick?
That was early in the game. We've been playing great defense for 3 weeks. I think we held them to 3 and out or whatever we did on the first drive. Tone setter, gut. I don't even know what I'm sure they told me in my ear, but I don't even know what the binder said. But it'd be interesting to see. Yeah, and again, that one. I hate 20-yard field goals, man. They don't make a whole lot of sense to me in terms of cost benefit, and so. We got to do it, but I think if faced with that same situation again, you're probably going to see us go for it again.
You're driving people crazy, though.
I don't care. Every metric in the book says that to go for it, and I would imagine. I feel fairly comfortable telling you that the binder does say to go for it in that, but I don't remember it specifically. But for an opportunity to get 7 instead of 3, I think, and you're 2 yards away from that 7, and if you don't get it, the other team is 98 yards away from 7. I think the cost benefit is well worth its weight.
Thank you, Roger.
Tom, Reggie Hemphill Maps, when he's on the field, he makes things happen. What is it about his skill set seems to make the first guy miss, shows a lot of toughness, maybe fearless?
Yep. He's all of those things. And the really cool thing about Reggie is he likes playing football. That guy, when you say, hey, who are give me a few names of guys that you just, love playing football, he would be one of the first names that comes to mind because he goes hard every day in practice. He has fun going hard. He can do it with a smile on his face. It's not drudgery. Is that a word? Drudgery? Drudge. Yeah, drudgery for him. He enjoys working and putting the pads on and playing football. And he's talented. He's quick. He's explosive. He's pretty top end fast. He's probably in the top 10 on our team. But I'd say first step quickness, he's in the top 2 or 3.
Coach, Malik Jefferson, obviously he leads your team in tackles, also quarterback hurries and tackles for loss. Can you maybe talk about the progress he's made from the spring to maybe where he is now, maybe the impact he's having now? Just knowing a quick, second question, Chris Daniels didn't play as much. I just wanted to know what was going on with that situation.
Who didn't play as much?
Chris Daniels.
I'll tell you, yeah. It's pretty observant to. Yeah, well, yeah. You said it, not me. Yeah, you mentioned Malik's progress and improvement from the spring. I would say Malik's progress and improvement from week 1 has been really cool to see. I mean, I'm really proud of the kid. We saw it throughout training camp. Didn't see it a ton in the first game, and I think he and his play and his willingness to cut loose and not evaluate, and his willingness to stick his foot in the ground and not worry about consequences and just go really hard has sparked the rest of the defense to do the same. I do believe that. Him and probably Deshaun are probably the 2 biggest catalysts for that transformation over the last few weeks. And then Chris Daniels rolled his ankle. Or what'd I say? Chris Daniels? Yeah, Chris Nelson.
Yeah,
is that?
Sorry if I
Chris Nelson sprained his ankle on Tuesday's practice and inside drill, and so he was a bit gimpy, not at 100%. So.
So, Coach, you've been in the situation Oklahoma is where you got a lot of quality wins early, and then you lose one. What happens? What changes mentally when you realize your team's not invincible and a little bit of self-doubt creeps in?
Ooh. I don't want to speak for their team. That would be silly because I don't know the makeup. I don't know the leadership. I don't know, what is inside that locker room. So, but I do know at Houston, I guess is what you're referring to when we, started off really well with a win, in the Advocare kickoff deal, and then we lost to Navy. And I think it's dependent on the team and the leaders that you have. There was no self-doubt on that team because we had some veteran leaders that understood that we didn't play well that night, and they played great. And we lost by 3 and turned the ball over 4 times, lost the turnover battle 4-0, and had a kickoff return to I believe it was the 19-yard line or 12-yard line or something like that, and they scored a touchdown the next play. So you can't do that against pretty much anybody and expect to win, let alone against Navy at that time. And so, there was some introspection, but certainly no self-doubt.
Tom, you, I guess, said in the conference call that maybe the lack of playing time for Amani may just be because of competition at his position. In the past, however, you have talked about him needing to step up more in practice, and at least one family member is publicly saying that they think this may be personal. What does he have to do to get more playing time for you in the future and down the road?
I mean, we got to practice better and play better than Gerard and Reggie, just like anywhere. Why does Colin play more than Dorian? Because Colin's playing better than Dorian. Why does Lorenzo Joe play more than Devin Duvernay? Because Lorenzo Joe although Devin had graded out as a champion and had a really good game, so I'm excited to watch him this week in practice. But why does Malik play more than Gary? Why does Anthony Wheeler play more than Ed Freeman? I mean, I think we're making this out to be a little bit bigger of a deal than it needs to be. There's competition every day in our program, and every day, if Gary Johnson practices and plays harder and better than Malik Jefferson, guess who's going to be our will linebacker? Gary Johnson. If Jason Hall practices and plays harder and better than Deshaun Elliott, guess who's going to be our starting safety? Jason Hall. But they're not. Why? I mean, there's only 11 of them. And in our case, we have 3 very quality H receivers. And at certain positions, you need to prod guys to go a little bit because there maybe not be as much competition. But at that position, you got to go. And it's extremely competitive.
Back middle, Steve.
Coach, the secondary is such a high-risk position to play on the field. You've had a lot of great individual plays by the secondary members, returns and stuff like that. But you're having a lot of breakdowns as well. Do you see that as a good trade-off, or are you looking for consistency?
No. I do like intercepting the ball, but I don't think I don't think you have to have one with the other. I think you can still be aggressive and intercept passes, but also be sound in your coverage. And right now there have been some issues at times in some different coverages, and it's kind of like offensive football. Every play is designed to score, and every coverage is designed to stop the pass route regardless of the pass route. And so are some better for some pass routes than others? Sure. Are there some run plays better for certain fronts, or pass plays better for certain coverages? Yes. And so But at the end of the day, they've all been repped and on paper able to defend different passes. We've just got to be cognizant of what we're asking our guys to do as coaches, and then as players, making sure that we're not always trying to make the big play, that we're not getting double moved, that we're not jumping hitches when we're supposed to be in the deep third, that we're not, that we're playing sound in the coverage that's called.
Far right, Chuck. Tom, we know you're not going to tip your hand on your quarterback, but just in terms of the decision making, does the fact that it's a special atmosphere at Cotton Bowl Stadium, a charged atmosphere, does that at all make you weigh starting a true freshman in that, or is Sam's progress make that a non-factor at this
Non-factor. Point? Non-factor. He started in the Coliseum against the number 4 team in the country. So, and I just saw, I guess, Longhorn Network, what do they run, like Red River games all week, I think. And I walked by, and in our new hallway downstairs, we have a big TV that's always on Longhorn Network. And I think it flashed it. James Brown got his first start in the Red River game. So if that was, he turned out to be pretty good, too.
Tom, what specifically, obviously OU loses to Iowa State this past weekend, but what specifically stands out about their offense and their defense that allowed them to go win at Ohio State?
A quarterback. A quarterback is a fun player to watch and make you pull your hair out as an opposing coach. And we know firsthand, having played him last year, but if he's not the front runner for the Heisman Trophy right now, I don't know who is. But he is electric, and you have to contain him. I believe I read somewhere they're leading the country in total offense right now at 550 yards a game, and a lot of that is because of him and his improvisation skills. And then on defense, very multiple. I think they, if you're not careful, just sitting in there early this morning, trying to figure out who are they. Mike Stoops been calling defenses for a long time, and they're very multiple. They're going to try to take away your strengths and make you play left-handed, so to speak, and we've got to be prepared to adjust.
Coaches, we've seen teams go after, obviously, Chris Boyd, and then, of course, we saw a little bit of PJ. Does that kind of speak volumes for what Holton Hill has been able to do, and that you don't see guys really trying to attack where he's at?
Yeah, I think it does. Now that you mention it, I never really look at it that way. I think, for having called offensive plays for a long time, very rarely do you say, hey, quarterback, don't throw it over there, or hey, we're going to always throw at this guy. I mean, there's never been that huge of a discrepancy in talent level between corners. We saw a little bit of it when we had the first rounder in William Jackson at Houston. That he got very, very few. He's a first-round corner that had very few PBUs. Well, why? Nobody threw the ball. Nobody threw the ball to him. So I'm digressing a little bit, but no, if that's the plan for opposing offense is great, because we've got the utmost confidence in Chris and PJ. But I do think that does speak volumes to Holton and his progress too.
Right, Bob?
Coach, when you have a kicker that's missed a few early in the year, especially in some big spots, what can you do 5 or 6 games in to kind of boost his? What does Craig do in that situation? And then second, is there any update on the quarterback decision in the last 15 minutes?
That was awesome. No update to answer your second part. I'll let you know if there is one. I don't know. I'm still trying to figure out the whole kicking thing. I think the only thing I know how to do is, we kicked him last night. He was 15 of 15 with 6 made from beyond 50. Tomorrow we're going to put him in more pressure, have the whole team standing around him and screaming and yelling and that whole thing, but that's not 100,000 people with the game on the line either. So, if it becomes problematic, that it's obviously a game issue, then, we're not, going to repeatedly perform the same act expecting different results. We've got to change something on game day. But for now, we got to exhaust all available avenues to prepare him for that moment. And if we're out of ideas and out of avenues, then we'll have to make a change at some point. But right now, we're going to trust that we can continue to get him better and more prepared for those moments.
Tom, big picture question. For so many years, this game defined and shaped Mac and Bob's legacies at their schools. And I just wonder, as a new coach coming in, Lincoln on the other side, this is the first time since the 50s that two new coaches have been going head-to-head. How do you feel about stepping into this role for this school in a game that you know how much it means to the fan base?
Responsible is probably the word that comes to my mind. It's not leading this program is definitely a responsibility unto itself, and but I would be naive not to tell you that this rivalry is important to a lot of people, a lot of stakeholders in this program, a lot of alumni, fans, Texas citizens of the great state of Texas in general. So with that comes a responsibility. But again, I think the only time that can be a negative thing if by recognizing that responsibility it causes you to perform your job or your duties differently than you would if you were preparing for any ball game. And we're not going to do that. We're going to understand and appreciate the rivalry, but also understand and appreciate our formula for success.
Back right, Jeff. Tom, just want to get your thoughts on your true freshman from that recruiting class you signed in February. I know some of those guys like Kerstetter kind of had to step in, but just your overall thoughts on their contributions and maybe that group as a whole after getting through a camp and almost to the halfway point of the season. Excited
as heck. You talk about, Tennille's getting more playing time, deservedly so. We talked about the running back rotation. We're pulling our hair out trying to maybe get Danny Young some playing time because he's practicing so well. Cade Brewer, we found something in him and what we have asked him to do. And that's obviously, you mentioned Derek Kerstetter, and that's just on that side of the ball, and then defensively haven't had the necessity to play as many, but Taquan Graham certainly gives us a lot of depth. Josh Thompson has played on special teams and I think is going to be a fantastic corner here someday. So really excited. There's not one of those kids yet, through a summer conditioning and a fall camp that you say, I'm not sure that guy can play here. I think we're really excited about them and their indoctrination into our way of doing things.
So time for two last ones. Danny on the left and then Roger.
Two quick ones from me. Do you guys have an health update on Connor Williams? And secondly, at the end of the Kansas State game, considering your guys' kicking problems and your binder, would you have considered going for it if you guys hadn't made it in?
No. Oh, at the end, only needing a field goal? No way. No. You want to talk about having some explaining to do up here? No, we would not have done that. And then, no, Connor is rehabbing, and I think we're going to probably know a lot more next week.
Middle, Roger?
Tom, can a back gain confidence by big moments, even if they've struggled? Speaking of Chris, the touchdown catch, the game-winning touchdown, is that something that maybe can kind of get him rolling?
I think a good back needs a good offensive line, and a good offensive line needs a good back. And can it get him rolling? Yeah, but he's only part of the equation. And just like, yeah, can your offensive line come away, you know, with some confidence knowing that you had 550 yards on Kansas State's defense? Yeah, but they're only part of the equation. So I think so. He should be confident in those plays. But we also know that him and Kyle and Tennille and that whole group still got to get better for us, too.
Thanks, guys.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.